So I'm going to tell you my story, and in the meantime, I'm going to explain to you why the Fenbendazol market is so shady and how I figured that out, and where I'm at today and how I can help you.
When you tell someone that a medicine for dogs cured your cancer, you better be ready for some skeptics. But Joe Tippin says it did save his life and others. And now even cancer researchers are open to the possibility it might be true.
My neck, my liver, my pancreas, my bladder, in my bones, it was everywhere.
2 years ago, Joe Tippin says he was told to go home, call hospice, and say his goodbyes. The doctors were unanimous. He was going to die of small cell lung cancer.
Once that kind of cancer goes that far afield, the odds of survival are less than 1%, and the median life expectancy is 3 months.
Tippin says he went from 220 pounds to 110, but that was January of 2017. Today, Tippins is very much alive, and what he credits for his survival has doctors scratching their heads and the rest of us raising eyebrows.
About half the people think I'm just crazy, and half the people want to know more and dig deeper.
Tippin says he got a tip, not from a pharmacist, but a veterinarian. And in his desperation, he turned from people medicine to dog medicine, specifically Fenbendazol, or what you give a dog when it has worms.
Truth is stranger than fiction, you know.
Just 3 months later, Tippin says his cancer was gone.
I'm usually skeptical, and I was, and maybe still am, about this one. But there's an interesting background to this.
Cancer researchers like Stephen Prescott are skeptical, but they also are not dismissing this anti-parasitic's potential. He says Tippins is not the first person to potentially benefit, and maybe not the last.
Scientists at many credible places have done work on this for years.
But was it the dog dewormer, or was it something else? Tippins took the dog medicine with daily vitamin E supplements and CBD oil. He was also taking an experimental cancer-fighting drug. But Tippin says out of the 1,100 patients on that clinical trial, he was the only one cleared of cancer. Tippin says he was saved by the dog dewormer, and he plans to take it for the rest of his life.
Well, my insurance company spent $1.2 million on me with traditional means before I switched to a $5 a week medicine that actually saved me.
Prescott says he's now working with Tippins to organize a case study.
We're going to do it and see if we can confirm that in a very rigorous sort of clinical study sort of way that these patients had that kind of response.
As for Tippins,
I've got now over 40 success stories other than me.
He's sharing his story on an online blog that has already been read more than 100,000 times. Most of the feedback, positive or curious. Some, though, accuse Tippins of giving cancer patients false hope.
How do I answer that? I mean, if I've saved one other person other than me, it's worth it to me.
All we know for sure is that Joe Tippins is alive. In time, perhaps we'll also know if this medicine made for man's best friend might also be man's newest cancer cure.
Fascinating. You know, when you're in the fight for your life, you don't care what it is. If it works for you, it works.
Yeah, absolutely. And he says, listen, I'm not a doctor, I'm not an expert, I cannot tell people to take this. I can't. He said, but it worked for me, and if somebody else wants to do the same thing, then they can do it too. Interesting thing, though, is that, you know, he mentioned $5 for that. He says it's actually doubled in price, because when you type in Fenbendazol in Google, one of the first or second things that pops up is cancer cure.
Wow.
So the talk is out there.
More and more people are catching on, but just incredible story. Evan, thank you.
So when my dog was sick, I always heard about this parasite thing, and I'm like, you know what, at least if it's true, at least it's going to be in dogs. So I aimed for some canine dewormer, some normal stuff you would get, because I wanted to be safe. I really care about my dogs. I didn't want some random stuff on Amazon, right? So I went with this stuff, but it was so expensive. I wanted to do it for 30 days. If you're just doing it for 3 days, this is reasonable. But I wanted to do it for a full 30 days based on some research that I did, because she was basically terminal. It was no good. Her glands were swollen behind her neck and behind her arms, not good. And she was coughing and gagging, which I later determined, I'm pretty sure it was some hookworm in her throat. So basically what I did was I went online and I looked for some Fenbendazol I could buy in bulk, and I came across Benzanol Lab. And I first bought them, and the stuff came, it was absolutely amazing. And I literally healed my dog with this brand. I got my new batch in, I gave her the rest of what I had of the other stuff. I had like 2 or 3 doses, and I ordered the new stuff. The new stuff came in, and it was bad. It was, in my opinion, bad. It was different. And let me explain to you this. So first thing I do when I have a product and I want to grab more, I figure out the active ingredient. So right here it says Fenbendazol, 22%, right? So through doing more research, the reason why it's 22% and not 100% Fenbendazol or 99.9% is because they put anti-caking agents in here because Fenbendazol is very cakey. So I knew when I got the stuff from these guys and it was super cakey, it stuck together, I knew it was most likely the best stuff. Long story short, they are not what I thought they were anymore. Through correspondence and through their new batch, I'll explain that to you. Real 99.9% pure Fenbendazol is going to be sticky. It's going to stick together. If you try to pour it out of stuff, it's going to stick to itself. It's going to clump together almost like snow or starch. So let's start off by doing this. Let's show you what the K9 dewormer granules look like. Okay, here's a fresh unopened pouch. Let's get a little black bag here. We're going to open this up. Okay. Powdery, chunky, white. So you see that stuff behind the chunks? That's the Fenbendazol, the real fine stuff. See how it's sticking? Even their anti-caking agent still makes it cakey. So that is the stuff you get from Safeguard Dewormer, Merck Pharmaceuticals. Okay, so then let's show you the 99.9% Fenbendazol. This is what it looks like here. Let's get a little spoon just so we could show you. Okay. See, it's cakey. When you move it, it kind of leaves a residue. It's almost like starch, like cornstarch. So when you see the pictures of it, you'll see it kind of like, you'll see it clumping together in little clumps. Okay, see how it's caking? So that's how you know it is 99.9% pure. Now, some people in reviews say that some of these people are actually cutting their stuff with chalk. That's insane. I bought a bunch of this stuff from a supplier that actually makes this stuff, and I bought it in bulk. And I know it's good. All right, so that's actual Fenbendazol. And then let's show you the new batch of what these guys gave me. Okay. See, it's super fine. So I don't mind there being something else besides Fenbendazol in it, like an anti-caking agent. But when they're saying that it's pure and it's not caking, that doesn't make sense to me. So if you look, this is slightly a different color and it's pure powder. There's no cakiness to it. It's not cakey enough. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but it's just different. It's too fine. So this looks like it may have been cut with some sort of, it doesn't even look white all the way. It looks kind of yellowish. If you can, yeah, so if you look, that was what stuck out to me is it's not white like the 99. It's like they cut it with something, okay? I just wanted to make sure to get up and close and personal and show you the difference, okay? Side by side. Okay, there's one. So that's the pure stuff. See how cakey it is? It's just different. It's completely different. I don't know if you can see, but they are different colors. And they are different consistencies. See how this pure stuff is cakey in here still, and this is just fine, hanging out together? It's different. The last thing I'll show you before I finish my story is Zeolit. This is basically volcanic crystal. It's rock that falls into certain volcanic solution. And it's interesting because this almost looks like the additive that's inside the canine dewormer safeguard. And the crazy part is it doesn't tell you what the other ingredient is in here. Interesting. Anyways, this is Zeolit, okay? This is what I choose to use to add. This is what I give to my dogs with it because you need a binder. So when all these parasites are dying, they're going to release heavy metals and toxins. They're doing that anyway, but when they die, they're really going to do it. And it causes this certain effect. I believe it's called the Herxheimer effect. It's a weird word. And this specific effect really makes you sick when you're going through a parasite cleanse. So you really got to make sure at least you have a binder. If somebody was going to do it for a human, even not with just fenbendazole, but something else, you're really going to want to get a binder, and you're also going to want to do a certain cleanse, maybe an enema. You really want to clear your drainage pathways. So this is volcanic rock, okay? It's basically crushed up crystal, very, very fine crushed up crystal. So that's what I give my dog personally. And if I were to take any for myself, if I had a reason to, a combination of fenbendazole with Zeolit. Zeolit by itself has a bunch of amazing qualities that they'd blow your mind if you knew. Anywhere from growing to removing heavy metals from children to yourself. Look it up on TikTok. It's all over the place. So I reached out to these guys. I explained my issue, and he didn't really know. He didn't really know. Here's the other thing that's really shady, okay? Comes with a quote-unquote lab report, right? Does that look legitimate to you? So here's what stuck out to me. Fenbendazole is spelt wrong. It's not how you spell fenbendazole. So it's spelt wrong, and this doesn't look like a legitimate lab report to me. And it's the same thing that comes in each one of them. And the other thing that really sticks out to me that I don't like about this company and other companies like this, they don't actually have their full address. They just have a state and then a Gmail. Where's their actual address where you would send legal correspondence if these people did something you don't agree with? You know what I mean? So anyways, those were shady aspects. When I reached out to them, they explained that it's a different batch, and it could be just, it's a different batch, and it could look different. They didn't really know what to say. Then anyways, I was like, all right, I want a refund. They're like, hey, if you don't like it, you're welcome to have a refund. And they were very polite. It looked legit as far as correspondence was going until I said, yes, I'll actually be taking that refund. And then they responded and said, all good. All good. So that's how I know these people are not legit. I mean, this doesn't look like they would be responding to you saying, all good, all good. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Then I went on and I started looking at other companies like FenLab. And you go to their site and you see they have multiple different brands, right? And you compare them with all the other brands that are out there, and there's not many. And all of these brands say research chemical, not for internal use. And I get that. That's what you got to do if you want to be able to have a product available for people in the market, I guess. But the point is, through the research, you go and you compare these brands. They use a lot of the same images. I swear, it looks like it's just one company doing different things, or people, or offshoots. It's just very amateur. There's no regulation to it, and it's just shady. So what I did was I looked up a bunch of manufacturers, did a bunch of research. I went with one that had years and years and years and years of reputation, and I took a chance on them, and I placed a bulk order through a payment method that I could get refunded if something went down. Anyways, the order came in. This stuff is absolutely amazing. I bought it in bulk, so I have plenty, and I never have to deal with this again. I've got 4 dogs. I need it for them, and it's very expensive if you go this route. So I wanted to make sure to go the right route, get a good price, and I bought in bulk. And then I came to the conclusion, I'm like, you know what? Other people may want this as well. I made a product strictly for research. You do what you want with it. I made a product that's Zeolit and fenbendazole. 444 milligrams fenbendazole and 556 milligrams Zeolit. And that's basically the perfect ratio of what you need to take these together to basically have that detox effect built in. Threw it all together. I decided to call it Fenbendazole. Long story short, be careful where you get your products. The point of this isn't to sell a product. The point of this is to tell you my story, how I helped my dog. I hope this helps you, and I hope this gives you a more informed decision when it comes to trying to remove parasites, cure cancer, or whatever else you're trying to do out here. If you go on TikTok, everybody claims this stuff can do a million different things. There's a lot of studies out there that do support most of those things. So I highly suggest you check out the research paper that we wrote. We also have different studies that you can check out, all for free. Just go to fenbendazole.com. Check it out. This has been Green Mountain Greenery. It's trying to make a difference out here.
Have parasites.
Why do I have parasites?
If you have a sweet tooth all the time and you like sweet stuff, that's because you have parasites.
I don't think that's true.
Dude, yes, look it up. Parasites actually will send signals to your brain to crave sweet stuff.
But I don't like
Have you done a
stuff
cleanse?
myself.
What she's talking about is Toxoplasma gondii. You contract this most likely from your pets, from swimming in open bodies of water, and from eating sushi. And they could literally hijack your mind and your body. An estimated 2 billion people on planet Earth have this parasite right now. But almost every other culture on Earth detoxes their bodies at least 2 to 3 times per year. But of course, not in the United States. The more and more people are learning about this, and they're taking liquid cleanses, which absolutely taste atrocious. Most people just puke it out. And if you take it in the pill form, it passes the gut, which in the gut and the esophagus is where a lot of critters hang out. And that's where they start hijacking you.
You know that Robert Kennedy had worms in his brain? Not even joking, a doctor found a dead worm in his brain. And the worm ate part of it. Look it up. And what's scary is the WHO says that 25% of people have intestinal parasites. And for some reason, we just don't do a deworming gut cleanse in this country. We do it for our pets, but not for us. And that's probably why bloating and gut issues are so common. If you have cats or dogs or kids, or if you eat pork or sushi, just saying you might have something living rent-free down here.
Blow your mind away.
Okay.
Hookworm was super common in the South, and it literally diminishes your capacity for thinking.
He's not lying. It was so bad it created a stereotype that makes everyone in the South seem like this. And you can get it as easily by walking around barefoot. Don't walk around barefoot, don't worry, your pets give it to you because they're around barefoot all day. And they sleep in your bed, lick your face, and hang out on your sofa. And their effects on children is devastating. And that's just one parasite of many. 60 million Americans right this second have a parasite. Some studies say it's up to 150 million. And like the opening comment said, America denies that they exist. Every other country does a parasite cleanse for their citizens, but not in America.
Most Americans have these. If you have constant fatigue and exhaustion, that's a huge sign. If you have gas or bloating after meals, or you have that stubborn pooch that just won't go away no matter what you do, these are all signs that you could use a cleanse or detox.
Some more of the
Let's do it.
detailed stuff. Okay, so first of all, I just saw that you had cancer and beat it with Fenbendazol just for, parasites. And that's one of the things that I took for a while. I'm curious, like, what got you onto that? Like, can you give a little background on that story?
Yeah, sure. It was kind of a wild story. I mean, it happened, so I was diagnosed, I started having some issues and couldn't quite figure out what was wrong, and finally was diagnosed in the summer of 2019. Instead of taking sort of a traditional path, which is my way, I decided, you know what, I got to go connect with God, and so I went to Spain and walked 500 miles on the Camino de Santiago. Came home and was sick as a dog. I shouldn't have gone, but I did, and I came back and started going through all the treatments. They gave me the drugs, they gave me the radiation, I went through surgery, and it just wasn't going away. And they kept detecting new things, and it had metastasized a little bit. And they did a biopsy in May of 2021, and it had spread to my kidneys. And so I was like, oh man, this isn't good. Just happened to run into a lady that's a surgeon friend of mine. She's like, man, I can't prescribe this to you. I can't even tell you to do this. Just go look at this website. Less than a day later, John, I was in. And then I kind of learned there were some other things you needed to do. Like I had already been doing intermittent fasting. And so if you starve your body of carbs, that's supposed to help cancer. And so I was already doing some of those things. And I was supposed to go back in for some follow-up stuff. They wanted to do another biopsy. They wanted to see how fast this thing was moving, and then they were going to make some decisions. And I was expecting surgery or whatever. So I'm taking this stuff, following the protocol, taking my zinc and taking my vitamin C and doing my intermittent fasting, cycling in and out of the Fenbendazol. And I mean, it still gives me kind of chills to think about. So I walked into my doctor's office in Houston, Texas, and they treat you in like teams there. So I had like 5 people on your team. You'd have like a nurse and your main doctor and the oncology guys and the radiology guys and all of that. And I walk in and everybody's in the room. First time I'd ever see them all in the same place at the same time. I mean, I immediately started thinking the worst. I'm like, oh, this is bad. So I'm not even going to sit down. Just tell me what the deal is. And they had the results of the most recent biopsy and a whole bunch of blood work and some scans and some other stuff. And my main guy stood up and just almost tears in his eyes and said, "You have no evidence of disease in your body." I'm like, wow. What? I mean, I couldn't even understand it. I thought, what? You know, because I was fully prepared to say, all right, let's go. Another round of surgery, whatever else you got to do.
Overlooked miracle drug for cancer, why Big Pharma fears Fenbendazol. At least 12 anti-cancer mechanisms of action, 9 research papers reviewed. So I think this stuff is supposed to be low cost, and this is some of the speculation, the conspiracy theory about like why people are afraid of it.
Well, I hope that I hope that Flint is aware of this and that it helps him to recover
that's why I brought it up.
from his cancer. That's very good to
I
know.
hope he's interested in even just examining it.
Oh, I think he will be.
I hope so.
But there's been some reaction to this.
I just found out about this a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
So these research papers, go stop right there, has at least 12 proven anti-cancer mechanisms in vitro and in vivo. It disrupts microtubulate polymerization.
Yeah.
Major mechanism, induces cell cycle, whatever that means, arrest, blocks glucose transport, impairs glucose utilization by cancer cells, increases P53 tumor suppressor levels, inhibits cancer cell viability, inhibits cancer cell migration and invasion, induces apoptosis, induces autophagy, induces, they're trying to get me with all these words, pryoptosis and necrosis, induces differentiation and senescence, inhibits tumor angiogenesis, reduces colony formation and inhibits stemness in cancer cells, inhibits drug resistance and sensitizes cells to conventional chemo as well as radiation therapy. Interesting.
And they're saying
Sensitizes cells to chemotherapy.
A very similar drug in the same family is already been approved by the FDA.
And that is Fenbendazol, and it is in several clinical trials right now for brain cancers and colon cancers. So why are no Fenbendazol clinical trials for cancer? The answer seems rather obvious. It's very cheap, it's safe, and it seems to be effective. Yeah, very effective.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Big Pharma don't see a margin in it.
I mean, if that, who knows? But if that is the case, I mean, what an enemy of the people. They're preventing information and preventing people from using things.
Yeah, well, we've created a society that seems to be designed to make us sick, and then Big Pharma steps in with so-called remedies for it, which happen to make some people a lot of money.
Real people, for sure.
Joe, your story started. Let's reel the clock back to when you first noticed that you might have a health issue. What happened, and what was going on in your life at the time?
Well, as it happened, I had accepted a partnership position with an investment firm in Zurich, Switzerland. Had my Swiss green card, had my apartment, my clothes were already in Switzerland. And Saturday, before my Tuesday flight to move permanently to Switzerland, I was feeling head congestion and thought I need something for the flight. So I went into a Saturday night doc in a box.
Oh, wow.
And the doctor there was the only guy in the office. Everybody else had gone home. It was closing time. And he did a chest x-ray and asked me to come in and look at it. And to me, it didn't look like anything, just some light swirls in my lower left lobe of my lung. And he said, that I'm not experienced at this, but that's troublesome to me, and you need to go have a CT scan. Well, I said, that doesn't look too bad. I'll just wait till I get to Switzerland. This guy probably saved my life because he hounded me all day Sunday and all day Monday.
He didn't. He did? He called you?
He called me 4 times on Sunday and 4 times on Monday because he could tell I was reticent to get a CT scan.
Wow.
So 4 o'clock on Monday afternoon before my Tuesday morning flight, I went in for a CT scan, and sure enough, there was a tumor the size of my fist in my left lobe. And that's really strange. I had no symptoms. To have a tumor that large in your lung and have no symptoms, right. I just couldn't believe it. So I canceled my trip to Switzerland and instead went to MD Anderson in Houston and started the traditional chemo and radiation and whole brain radiation prophylactically in Houston. And
did they do a biopsy at the time?
I had the biopsy done here in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
And it was small cell lung cancer, which is the worst. And a lot of trials and tribulations. The radiation in my left lung came all 6 times, twice a day, in 6 angles, all going through the same spot on the esophagus.
Oh my gosh.
And they fried my esophagus into bacon, nothing would go down.
So, I mean, they didn't change the angles in order to, not fry everything?
No, they didn't. They just, all 6 angles went through that same spot on the esophagus.
Oh my gosh.
So I couldn't have any nutrients for 8 weeks. And I made a crazy decision. I decided that I would live off my fat stores and my muscle stores instead of get a feeding tube.
Yeah, you weren't going to have the second option, were you? I know a lot of people.
I wasn't going to do that, and I so over an 8-week period, I had 0 nutrients.
There's a new peer-reviewed published study which suggests using the animal dewormers, Panagir and ivermectin, for cancer. They suggest that these 2 pretty safe animal drugs, they can target cancer stem cells and the metabolic pathways which lead to cancer. Panacur, it's the safest dewormer to start with, doses of 50 mg per kilo, 3 days on, 4 days off. Tula is 22 pounds, 10 kilos, 50 times 10 equals 500 milligrams. I would give her 5 mils for 3 days on, 4 days off. Do that for 30 days and assess if it's helping or not. Before you start any drug like Ivamac, you first need to talk to your veterinarian, assure that it's safe and appropriate for your dog. Standard Ivamac dose, 0.2 milligrams per kilo. So she'd be getting 0.2 cc's. I would do that once a day for 30 days. Then assess, is it being beneficial or not? So if your dog ever gets cancer, seriously consider Panacur, ivermectin.
Me and Remy are going to show you how to deworm your puppies at 2 weeks with Safeguard. Safeguard is just one of my preferred dewormers. I rotate my dewormers every couple weeks so that the puppies do not get immune to it. First, you're going to weigh all your puppies, and you should be keeping a daily weight chart anyways. Shake up your wormer and then get a 1 milliliter syringe. I attach the dosage chart up top. Refer to the dosage chart with your puppy's weight and give it the appropriate dose. You're just going to fill up the syringe, insert the syringe into the mouth, and depress the plunger. Make sure the puppy swallows all the wormer. Don't be nervous, it's very hard to overdose with dewormer. Follow for more tips and tricks.
For worms, keep the colon clean. You might need to do some colon cleansing because worms will only live in a colon that's not working well. I almost said dirty colon, and you might say, Barbara, all colons are dirty. That's right. The waste is coming out. But when a person is eating a lot of sugar, a lot of wheat, a lot of refined foods and meat, this encourages the growth of worms. But on a vegetarian diet, when the person is eating a plant-based diet and they're evacuating 2 times a day if they're eating 2 meals, 3 times a day if they're eating 3 meals, can you see there isn't really ground for the worms to live? Now, worms hate garlic.
Because another dirty little secret that's come out in all this, doctors all over the world now are showing videos, and there was a German research project years ago in the 90s, I think, showing cancer was parasites, intracellular parasites.
Every disease that we have is caused by just 2 things: a combination of a parasite and a pollutant. No matter what the disease is, it's a parasite and a pollutant, just at a different place. So whether it's cancer or diabetes or migraines or whatever it is, look for the major parasite and the major pollutant, and that's what is actually the dominant cause of that disease. So going back to cancer, the parasite there is a human intestinal fluke, and the pollutant is isopropyl alcohol. That creates the malignant aspect of a cancer.
In 1950, Hulda was awarded a Bachelor of Arts magna cum laude, and later on a master's degree with high honors for her studies in biology at the University of Saskatchewan. In 1958, the University of Minnesota awarded her a doctorate degree in physiology with a focus on biophysics and cell physiology. Dr. Hulda Clark's most important discovery was the Zapper, a handheld, battery-operated device intended to eradicate pathogens using frequency. This was the beginning of an exciting new development in science, her gift to humanity. Find out more at huldaclark.com.
Well, you might call it the Cancer Zapper. It's an exciting, minimally invasive treatment for inoperable tumors. It's being used right here in Maryland, and the technology is giving patients and doctors new hope. 11 News' Donna Hamilton has tonight's special medical alert.
Joyce Carreri more than ever has an appreciation for life these days. Back in March of 2009, she was having symptoms of acid reflux. Bothersome, but she wasn't concerned.
I was 49. I'm thinking, I've never had this before, but okay. Started taking some Prilosec and wasn't getting any better.
Joyce says a few weeks after that, she was vomiting and losing weight, and she knew those symptoms had to be checked out.
Long story short, about 4 weeks later, I was sitting in a doctor's office, and he said, basically, you know, Mrs. Carreri, 9 times out of 10 when I see this, it's cancer. And I was like, whoa, cancer. Hadn't heard that one before.
This is how Joyce looked a little over 2 years ago. The normal on here is this is a kidney, that's bladder, that's all normal. The rest of these innumerable spots are cancer.
Wow, all these white spots.
All these little white spots are tumors.
University of Maryland's Dr. Fred Maceline says Joyce's cancer originated in her pancreas and metastasized to her liver. Not a good situation.
When I heard pancreatic, I thought, okay, I've got, a few months to live, maybe.
That's when Dr. Maceline suggested a new procedure called IRE, or irreversible electroporation.
The thing that's different about irreversible electroporation is that it doesn't use heat, it doesn't use cold.
And prior therapies used one of the two. You either froze a tumor or burned a tumor. This zaps a tumor using electricity to open tiny holes in cells, killing them.
It leaves intact things like nerves, blood vessels, bile ducts, which allows us to go into places that we were never able to approach before.
And Dr. Maceline uses IRE with a minimally invasive approach.
I take needles, I don't make any skin nicks. I just literally, I introduce the needles through the skin into the target tissue and do my ablation without making a major hole. And you can see as I page up and down that these needles are positioned at precise intervals throughout her liver in and around the tumor.
It's been a year now since Joyce had IRE.
And I think all this is, and the radiologist agrees with me, this is just a scar. This is now all dead tissue.
And Dr. Maceline says IRE can be used to ablate tumors anywhere except the central nervous system, so not in the brain or spinal cord yet.
But almost anywhere else, within reason, I've treated legs, heads, chest, liver, throughout the abdomen, kidney, patients that are not surgical candidates, not radiation candidates. Now we're opening up opportunities for them for treatment that weren't there before.
And he thinks maybe within a decade, IRE will change how cancer is treated.
What we're doing today is better than what we did 10 years ago, but it's a far cry from what we want. And this may be the kind of technology that really helps us get there.
Organisms are being shattered by our electronic signal, an important breakthrough. Killing more cancer cells as if you had used radiation. We didn't use any drugs. These forks are both made to vibrate 440 times per second. Their frequency is 440 hertz, putting little pulses of energy into it. Second fork will also vibrate. If I silence this fork, we could shatter a living microorganism by sending special electronic signals to it. Dr. James Bear of Albuquerque, New Mexico, called a resonant frequency therapy device, induce a resonant vibration in a living organism or cell. The output always pulses. It's on, it's off, it's on, it's off. On the effects of electromagnetic waves on living organisms and cells, if the signal is constantly on, you are in danger of inducing heat in those cells. Heat causes indiscriminate destruction. We want targeted destruction. Have to have two input frequencies, one low, one high, and the higher frequency must be 11 times the lower, called the 11th harmonic. We begin to shatter microorganisms. They said they hadn't seen anything quite like it. Seems to be a new phenomenon.
When they broadcast an 18 gigahertz signal for 1 minute, 3 different times as a pulse, it will cause those lipid nanoparticles to swell and release these pathogenic contents thereby causing a Marburg epidemic that they've already spent the money on. It's already done.
Parasites and pollution. The word parasites is used in two senses. Everything living on you or in you, not just to perch, but to take its food from you, is a parasite. No matter what its size, it can be called a parasite. But in some way, the big worms need to be distinguished from the medium-sized amoebae, the even smaller bacteria, and the smallest of all, viruses. So often, the term parasite is reserved for the bigger things, from amoebae on up. In this book, the word parasite will be used in both ways as usual. You can easily guess what is meant. Parasitic worms are divided into roundworms and flatworms. Roundworms are round like earthworms, even though they may be as thin as hairs, threadworms, filaria, or microscopically small like trichinella. Flatworms are more like leeches. They have a way to attach themselves, sometimes with a head, scolex, like tapeworms, sometimes with a special sucker, like flukes. Worm parasites go through stages of development that can look very, very different from the adult. Roundworms, like Ascaris, common cat and dog roundworm, are simplest. The eggs are swallowed by licking or eating a bit of filth. They hatch into a tiny larva. The larva treks to the lungs, you cough it up and swallow it. Meanwhile, it has molted a few times. It then crawls to the intestine, where it becomes an adult, shedding eggs in your stool. Worms usually have preferred locations. The favorite organ for Dirofilaria, dog heartworm, is the heart, even human heart. Sometimes the rules can be broken. My tests show Dirofilaria can live in other organs too, if they are sufficiently polluted with solvents, metals, and other toxins. Flatworms, like tapeworms, are much more complicated in their life history. You could eat the eggs accidentally with dirt. After hatching, the tiny larva burrows into its favorite organ. Your body encases it with a cyst. The white blood cells have been taught never to attack your body, and the cyst case is your body. So the tapeworm stage has safe residence for some time. If you are a meat eater, you could eat such a cyst if it happens to be lodged in the meat you are eating. Your teeth break it apart as you crunch. The little larva is swallowed and tries to attach itself to your intestine with its head. Then, it grows longer by making segment after segment. The segments with their eggs leave with the bowel contents. I often see dog tapeworm of the small variety in their human family. Flatworms, like flukes, are also very complicated. The eggs passed out with bowel contents were not meant to be eaten as such. They were meant to hatch in a pond where snails and minnows eat them. The larva grows up in these new secondary hosts. Later, the snail sheds them and they attach themselves to foliage near the pond. They overwinter in a tough metacercarial cyst. An unsuspecting browsing animal now eats them. They come out of their metacercarial cyst as a small adult and quickly attach themselves to the intestine with a sucker. They now have safe haven and can go about maturing and laying eggs. 4 common flukes are human intestinal fluke, human liver fluke, sheep liver fluke, pancreatic fluke of cattle. Don't let the terms sheep and cattle mislead you. They are all found in humans. That was pages 31 to 33 from the book The Cure for All Diseases by Hulda Clark. For more information about parasites and pollution, visit huldaclark.com.
Right. If you look at a cancer metastasis, or an adenocarcinoma of the bowel, for example, or breast cancer under the light microscope, it's essentially indistinguishable from these parasite egg sacs. He said he has a friend who's a 40-year Egyptian parasitologist. And he asked him, and he pointed this out to him. He said, hey, I've been looking at this cancer versus the parasite egg sacs, and they look identical under the microscope. And this guy got real wide-eyed and said, in 40 years in parasitology, not one oncologist has made that association, but we talk about it all the time in parasitology circles. I translate it as saying, they know that cancer is parasites. They're not speaking because they don't want to lose their funding.
And you know what also worms hate? Is pumpkin seeds. So for worms, eat pumpkin seeds as the first thing that goes into your mouth at breakfast. There's something in the pumpkin seeds that the worms hate. And then raw garlic. So how do you take the raw garlic? You can mix the raw garlic with a little bit of olive oil and put it on your sourdough toast, or you can squeeze the raw or crushed garlic into your beans or your tofu. Or you can mix it in a little water and just throw it down. Now, if there's a bit of discomfort at night, because the worms come out at night, you can get a clove of garlic, lubricate it, and you can insert it into your anus. And then no worms will come out. Now, what that really just does is bring some relief. But what you've really got to do is hit it from the inside.
How do you know if your itchy butt is due to pinworms? These are tiny worms that live in your intestine during the day, but creep out of your butthole at night and lay eggs. These eggs can cause severe itching around your butthole and is one of the main signs of a pinworm infestation.
So not only are pinworms super common, but they are actually really contagious. Nearly 40 million Americans have them right now. Other than the itching, they're hard to detect, and doctors don't care to find them. You have to take your health into your own hands.
So when you take the Fenbendazol, for example, do you have any side effects that you noticed?
I've never had any, and 90 to 95% of the people do not. About 5 to 10% of the people have reported back mild diarrhea. I've had, out of thousands, I've had 2 or 3 say severe diarrhea. But look, if it's less than 10%, it could be something else causing that, and not the Fenbendazol. You don't know.
I have to say that I was as astonished as anyone might be that ivermectin has potential as an anti-cancer agent. I'm a cancer surgeon. We don't do parasites, okay? In the early days of COVID, when it became clear that ivermectin was effective in preventing and treating patients with a SARS-CoV-2 infection, I began to be aware, having looked in the literature, that there was 20 years of research. I was introduced to a patient with stage 4 prostate cancer. Had received 2 vaccines, perfectly healthy, marathoner, no history of cancer in the family. 2 months after his second Pfizer shot, he works for the government. He's going to lose his job and his pension if he wasn't vaccinated. He was diagnosed all at once with stage 4 prostate cancer. He tells a very compelling story, melodramatic story about that 24-hour period of time in his life. And he went through the traditional protocols: radiation, chemotherapy, pharmacologic castration, all of it, over a period of 9 months. And then his doctor said, there's really nothing else we can do. And his name is Paul Mann, and he was like, can't you give me more radiation? No. Can't you give me more chemo? No. Aren't there any other drugs? No. Are there any clinical trials? There's nothing. Hospice. Send for the priest. So A friend of his knew me, and she said, would you give Paul a call? He just needs some moral support, something. So I said, sure. So I began calling him. We spoke about once a week for 3 weeks, and finally, the poor guy was suffering, had cancer in 11 bones in his body. His right leg was completely swollen, obstructed with tumor. He's miserable. And I said, Paul, I don't know if this is going to help you, but I know it's not going to hurt you. I just can't imagine, based on my judgment and understanding of the scientific literature and all of the work that Drs. Corey and Merrick had done, and others around the world, that ivermectin would hurt you. It might help. I can't say. So he said, you know, I'll give it a try. And he drove to Tennessee, where you could get it without a prescription. P.S. I discovered last night, having dinner with Paul and his wife, Terry, he drove from where he lives in Missouri to Tennessee and paid cash for his ivermectin. That's it. He didn't submit it to an insurance company. He didn't tell anybody back in Missouri, his oncologist, no. His ivermectin prescriptions are listed in his chart. How did that information get from the pharmacy in Tennessee to his chart in Missouri? We don't know. Somebody does. I'd like to know myself. Anyway, he starts taking ivermectin, and he doesn't have any problems with it. And I talk to him every week. And how are you feeling? Well, no change. Next week, maybe a little bit better. I don't know. How's your leg? It's not quite as swollen. How's the pain? Pain everywhere. Maybe a little bit better. Slowly, slowly, slowly. Not getting worse. Not necessarily getting better, not getting worse. Fast forward. 2-month follow-up appointment at the clinic. They didn't expect to see him. Okay, he's like, Paul. He's feeling a little bit better. They do PSA, which was off the charts to begin with. And if I'm not mistaken, at the time they randomized him to hospice, I think it was in the hundreds, maybe 700, 800.
What does that mean exactly for the layperson?
Over 4 would be abnormal. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what are we talking about here? Prostate cells normally secrete a protein, prostate-specific antigen. Mm-hmm. It's one of the things that they do. Cancer cells that originate in the prostate, that are dividing rapidly and growing fast, are spitting out PSA. Mm-hmm. Okay? It's not that they're contributing to the body economy in any way. It's just they just want to multiply and divide, and that's the end of the story. And so your PSA levels start to rise, which is a marker, a screening marker. Oh, your PSA was 4, and now it's 8. Let's do a prostate ultrasound, whatever. So PSA can be a screen for the emergence of a tumor, but it can also be used, particularly at high levels, as evidence for cancer, response to cancer, recurrence of cancer. His was, I mean, it's supposed to be, 4, yeah, it's hundreds. Okay, he goes back for his 2-month appointment. It's 1.3. They said, you're in remission. Well, not, complete remission. He still had the bone mets, but you're in like a biochemical remission. Well, that was good news. Slowly, 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 he begins to improve. Less pain, swelling is okay. A lot of other vaccine injuries, however, he's getting better. He's getting better. We're giving him nutritional support and other supplements. He's having TIAs, little mini strokes. But he didn't tell me about that because we were talking about the cancer. But over a period of time, I'm asking him questions. And I said, oh, you're having TIAs? His wife said, yeah, having TIAs. I said, what did the cancer doctors tell you? Because that's who he's seeing. They say it's not related to my cancer. It's like, so I get a call from his wife one evening. He's in the emergency room. He's had this TIA, whatever it is, catastrophic. And I said, Paul, what are they doing for you? And he said, well, they did a CAT scan of my head, and they said they don't see anything specific. It's a TIA, and it's not related to my cancer. They send him home. I said, did they do anything? No. I said, well, okay, call me crazy. I'm a cancer surgeon, but I think you need to see a cardiologist. I think there are things they can do, okay? And of course, I look it up really quickly, and of course there are things. So Get him to the cardiologist, get him on blood thinners, no more problems with TIAs. Okay, that's an indictment of the healthcare system. So he's getting better. About 9 months later, he's out dancing for 4 hours, 3 nights a week. He gets a head-to-toe rescanning, and 3 of the bone mets are gone. There's no growth of the mets that are there. No new lesions. There's only one hot spot, and that's where he received radiation therapy, and the radiologist really could not distinguish whether that was a tumor hot spot or radiation change. He is doing very well. The vaccine injury is a problem, but the cancer is no longer a problem, except for the fact that it's still there, and we want to get rid of it completely. And he said, he called me from a hockey game, and he said, if I didn't know I have cancer, I would not know I have cancer. That was patient number 1. I was like, that's interesting. A second patient crossed my path. A guy in his 70s who had been losing weight for a year and a half, 40 pounds, not vaccinated, 40-pound weight loss, smoker, drinker, all he does is fish. And he could no longer swallow, and he could hardly talk. And so I got on the phone with him, and I said, Eddie, tell me a little bit about your history and so forth. He knew someone with prostate cancer who had taken ivermectin. He cured himself from prostate cancer with that. So Eddie began taking ivermectin. I have no idea what the dosing was. He was just taking it. And I gave him some advice about diet and, try and get the weight back on and so on and so forth. Within a couple of weeks, he sounded stronger. Sounded stronger. He could swallow. He had gained 6 pounds. His voice was better. Followed him for the next couple of weeks, maybe another month or so, and I said, Eddie, we need to get a scan. He doesn't have insurance, he doesn't like doctors, whatever. He had been diagnosed in that interval with 2 esophageal tumors, unresectable. Surgeons wouldn't go near it. The doctor said, well, we'll give you chemo and radiation, and Eddie said, no, you're not. So he takes his ivermectin. Maybe about 6 weeks later, I said, Eddie, you need to get a scan. I had to argue with Eddie to get a scan. We got the scan. No tumors. Gone. Gone.
I'm going to start off by saying that I am unvaxxed and untested. And this is a Morgellon fiber I took out of the top of my foot. You'll see a picture of the top of my foot at the end of this video. This is another one. Can't remember where I got it off of my body at, but you can see they move on their own. Craziest thing ever.
Parasites are already farming in your bodies. The big ones make mucus balls. They put food in there. They entice other varieties in there. They seal them up. They feed them. And when they're big enough, they let their young in there to eat them. We've witnessed this. So they're farming in you. Can you imagine if that's a conscious state and a parasite finds out that a woman now is going to have a child, and so the child's now taking all the special enzymes and all the special things? What does that parasite do? Well, it gets on a bunch of filth and it gets up into the brain and knows exactly where to lean against the walls, throwing into a state of cravings for foods that they want. This is a conscious state of thought. And they're not stupid. And when they're upset with you, they want you to stop doing that, so they all urinate at the same time. They basically urinate at the same time to make you stop doing whatever it is you're doing, so that you think that the herbs you're taking or whatever you're taking is making you sick. That's a state of consciousness. So when you're doing the work I'm going to show you, you don't want to be evolving those parasites and making them smarter. Because when you go to God's banquet table, so do they. All right? Always remember this. If you do a deworming project, I don't care how good it is, go to the health food store or somewhere else and buy a little dumb junker program for deworming that just doesn't really work well, and add that to it on the 15th day. The bugs get used to the hertz rate or the vibration of the herbs. And the ones, some survive and they hang on. If you throw in another junker program, it changes the vibratory rate. And as a result of that, the rest of them let go, and you can get an awful lot of buggies out of you in a short period of time. Like 5 pounds at one sitting is not uncommon. At least a pound is very common. 8 pounds is a little uncommon. And the worst it was ever was 40 pounds. 40 pounds? I mean, can you believe that? I mean, it took him 2 days, but 40 pounds. His wife didn't believe me. She was a nurse. I mean, can you imagine? 40 pounds of parasites in 2 days. And she kept them. Now that's either incredible interest or love, one or the other, and I'm not sure what it is.
Everyone has parasites in their body. So if you've eaten within the past week, touched an animal, sat on a toilet seat, taken a shower, or swam in a body of water, even if you've touched another human being, you likely have parasites. And because testing to find parasites is inconclusive, here is how to know you're infected with them. If you have unexplained headaches or migraines, any type of brain fog or fatigue, if you have anxiety or depression, do you wake up in the middle of the night? Do you grind your teeth? If you're tired upon waking in the morning, if you have any type of skin issue, or if your skin feels like it's crawling, you likely have parasites. Do you have bloating or pain in your abdomen? How about constipation, issues with diarrhea? If you have pain in your joints or muscles, or if you have issues with yeast infections or SIBO, you very likely have parasitic infections. These are all warning signs within your body, and here is the most important thing to consider about these parasites. They cannot thrive in a toxic body. So if you're having any of these types of symptoms, you must understand why your body is supporting them and how to get rid of them through safe and effective drainage detoxification.